All right, today we're going to go over the setup for setting up Sublime Text for development with Node/Angular development for our project. I'm going to post this to YouTube, but this will probably be public, which would mean it'll be available for anybody that will want to use or look at this video for setting up their machine for Mac. So it's perfectly fine to do that. But for particular, this is for, I'm making this video for our offshore team to get them up and running with our project. So what we'll do, we'll just start from scratch, from installing Sublime Text, installing Node, and then installing a few plugins to make Sublime Text a little bit more powerful or amenable for using for development. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Sublime Text. So we'll just do a quick search here for Sublime Text. We'll use the latest version, Sublime Text 3. We'll download it. Again, I'm using a Mac, so we'll install the OS X version. So we'll go ahead and just drag it to our applications folder, and that'll go ahead and get Sublime Text installed. Heard a little ping, so that is installed. So if I do a search for Sublime Text, there it goes. And Sublime Text is now installed. So we'll close that window here and we'll eject that installer. One of the things I really like to do is, after installing Sublime Text, is installing a terminal. Right now, almost obviously, the Mac comes with a terminal application, but there's a more powerful one I like to use called iTerm. So we'll use that one because I tend to be inside the terminal a lot. So we'll go ahead and install iTerm 2. That's the latest version. And we will install the latest version for the iOS 10.7. That comes to us as a zip file. And what we'll do is we'll just drop that in our applications folder. Okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll take iTerm and we will just drop it in our applications folder. And now we should see iTerm. Okay, so now we have a terminal. I'll go ahead and make a few preference changes here so I can just understand, I can get the colors the way I like it. Here we go. So I'll normally like to do a more lighter color for background. And for foreground, I normally like to use white. Okay. And I just installed this, but the cool thing about iTerm, it normally checks when you start the app for any new version. If it do, it just download it for you. All right, so we got iTerm installed, and we also have Sublime Text installed. Okay, so one of the things I normally like to do is create like a symbolic link for Sublime Text so I can kind of start it up from the terminal directly. So we'll do that right now, and we can do that with the ln function or command. Give it a -s to make it symbolic, and we'll go ahead and map it to the Sublime Text executable, which is an application, SublimeText.app, contents, shared support, bin, Sublime. And what we'll do is we'll put it in our local bin folder, which is already on our path. And I'll give it a command of SL for Sublime. And we'll go ahead and create that. Now if I just type SL, Sublime Text should pop up. And there we go. So we're good to go there. The next thing we can do, so now we have Sublime Text installed, we need to go ahead and install Node. And it's very important to follow these instructions. I don't have Node installed right now because this is a fresh install of the OS for Mac, but we'll go ahead and do that now. Normally, if you're invoking Node from the terminal and you're using sudo node, you're doing it wrong. You normally don't want to do that. You should just type node or type npm or any other commands of Node without having to use a elevated privilege. So what we'll do is we'll use a version manager to install Node. I normally use NVM, which is very good for kind of managing and installing multiple versions or different versions of Node, which is very cool. So you can kind of like use version 0.10.11 for a project that you may be working on, but if you want to use the latest breaking edge version of Node, like 0.11 .asterisk, you can do that as well. So this is NVM, and I think if I scroll down here, it'll give me command to install it to the command line, and we'll do that. So I'll just copy this. I'll go to the command line and paste this. The cool thing about iTerm, it supports copy and paste keys. So I just did a command V there to paste that into terminal, into iTerm. Now if I just hit enter, by default it's using Git to get some things, and I don't have Git installed on this machine yet. I will install it like my own custom version using homebrew, but for now it's going to use the Git version that comes installed with Xcode. So we'll go ahead and just click OK to install that. I'm on battery power now, but I got plenty of battery, so we should be good to go. And it'll go ahead and download. Okay, so now I have that installed, but before I'm able to run this, I'm going to have to make some change to some dot files to get this to running. The one of them would be my bash RC file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Sublime Text using the new symbolic link that I just created. And I'm going to open or create, if it's not available, a bash RC file. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use this command to invoke or start up NVM. And I'll save this. So now if I just source that bash.rc file, oops, sorry, it's a dot. Now I should see NVM and the commands for NVM. Just to be on the safe side, we're going to make a change to the bash.profile file as well. And we will just add an if statement here. That was a cool thing about Sublime. It automatically realizes a dot file and went ahead and created an outline for the if. And we'll say if this bash RC file exists, then source it. And that's it. Later tools will make changes to this file, but these statements won't get overwritten. So basically, the difference is whether or not this is an interactive login versus non-interactive. Non-interactive could be you're logging in via SSH. So you'll need to have both of these files added in this way. Bash RC would just source to NVM shell script, and the bash profile file will just source that bash RC file if it exists. If it doesn't, we should be good. And we'll test to make sure that that bash profile file is okay. There's no errors. And yeah, no errors, so we're good to go. Okay, so now that we have NVM installed, and just to test this, I'm going to close terminal completely. And iTerm I'm at, and I'm going to start it back up. And NVM should automatically be installed. Okay, so now we can go ahead and install a version of Node. So we'll go ahead and look at Node, the website to see what's the latest version, the latest stable version. So the latest stable version is 0.10.3.4. So we'll go ahead and install that by just doing nvm install, and it will say 0.10.3.4. Okay, so now we see that Node is installed. If we type node v, we see that 0.10.3.4 is running. And again, notice I'm not using I'm not using sudo to elevate my privileges. I'm just typing node directly, you know. So if I could just run node, you see that everything works great. What's cool about NVM is I can install multiple versions. So assume that for a particular environment like QA, we're using 10.2.8, where we can just install it just by doing nvm install. Okay, now you see after a lot of installing and a lot of compiling, now I have version 10.28, and if I check, you see I have that version. I can also see the list of nodes that I have installed just by doing nvm list, and it'll just list the different interpreters that I have. So it's cool because right now the default is 10.34 also, but I have it in my particular terminal session at 10.28, which would mean if I were to exit out and then go back into terminal, let me quit this completely so we know that that's complete. Now if I do a version, now I see that node isn't installed. So the issue here is, although I have some interpreters installed, I don't have a default set. So we'll do that now. So I do an nvm alias default, and we'll say 0.10.3.4. So what that's done is now I have an actual default specified at 10.34. So now if I'll exit this time and I'll close our term again and restart it, I should see a node version. And if I check the version, it should be 10.34. But I can go to the version that I installed previously just by doing node use 0.10.28. I'm sorry, it's nvm use 0.10.28. And now we're at that version. And just to verify that, now we see that I'm using 10.28. So now we have Sublime installed, we have Node installed, we have our term that we're using for installing Node and running the app. So now we'll go move on to like just installing the dependencies for the app to make sure everything's running there. So now I'm in the folder where the app installed, and again I can use the Symbolic link to bring up the project, and really like that because Sublime is very fast and it opens pretty quickly, and I just give it the folder with that for the period, and it'll just give me all the files in that folder. Now I can just start installing dependencies since I have Node installed, and we'll check the version that we're using is 10.28. We're going to go ahead and use 0.10.34, which is the default version for this machine. So we'll go ahead and do npm install to install all the dependencies. Okay, so now that we have all the dependencies, the server-side dependencies, we'll go ahead and install the client-side dependencies. So we use bower for that. Just type in bower. If I type that command, you see I don't have it installed, so I'll have it install it via npm, and we'll install it globally. So we'll just type npm install, give it a flag of G, and then bower. Now, if I just type bower install, it wants to anonymously report statistics. I'm going to hit no there, and it'll just go ahead and install all the dependencies that have been defined in our bower.json file. Okay, so now we have all the client-side dependencies here. Normally I'll start up the app, and the startup app we use Gulp, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the set of tests we have been writing since the beginning of this project. And what we've been using, we've been using Karma as a test runner for that. So I'll go ahead and install Karma. Globally. And so then what I'll do is I'll just do Karma start from the command line. What this should do, it'll spin up Chrome, as you see in the background, and it ran all the tests. Right now we only have about 92 tests, but it goes through all it's testing mostly controllers, a few factories, and a couple of other Angular components, and just outputting the results. And here I have 92 tests that ran in a little over 1 second, and they all seem to pass successfully. So now we see that just gives me a good indication that the project is installed correctly. So now that we've done that, now we're at the point where we have Sublime Text installed. We've installed Node via NVM. We even installed a new terminal that's a little bit easier to manage. And one of the reasons I like our term too is unlike the default terminal app, we can have tabs, which makes it really easy. If you wanted to like maybe run the app in one tab and maybe check in files or make changes in another tab. So it's really, really easy to kind of use our term in that fashion. So now what we'll do is we'll install homebrew. So one of the things I like to use, especially when I'm in Git, is I like to use this GitK utility to kind of show me the branch structure, the commit history structure, things like that. With the version of Git that comes installed via Xcode, that's not installed, but it is a part of the Git version of homebrew. So what we'll do is we'll just hop over here to the browser again, and we'll just type homebrew for the Mac. And hopefully there we go. Hopefully my internet connection is working. And so, and it has a lot of tools. Like I think by default, I don't think the Mac comes with wget, which is another way to make a URL call similar to curl. Well, with homebrew, you can install that. So what we'll do is we'll just scroll down here. At some point, it'll tell us how to install it, and here it is. Almost all Mac installs come by default with a Ruby interpreter. So we'll just copy this. We'll paste this into our terminal, and we just hit enter. And hit enter to turn. Give it a password. And let it install homebrew. Okay, so now that homebrew is installed, it normally suggests to run brew doctor. In most instances, to kind of make sure your path is set up correctly. So I'll do that. And it says system is ready to brew. So if I just type brew, that normally is the command. And again, it's just a package manager similar to apt-get for Ubuntu for installing components. So again, I was talking about how I like to use GitK utility to look at the branch structure of Git. I will actually do that now using brew. So if I type brew install Git, it'll go ahead and install, and it is installing Git for me now. Now, if I think I am in the directory that our Git repo is in, and now if I do GitK, sure enough, it brings up the GitK utility that I like to use. You can see commit history, authors, things of that nature. So now we have successfully installed homebrew. Now we can finally start looking at Sublime Text and improving on this IDE. So this is the default install for Sublime. I haven't really installed anything of that nature. Some of the cool shortcuts we can use to search for files, we could just do Command P. And we can like look for any file that we want to within the project. So here I'll just look for app.html, and it'll just return that file. What we want to do is we actually want to install a package control manager for Sublime itself. So to do that, if I look up Sublime package control, and if I click this, what I see is, well, this is just a pretty good site of all the plugins that people have created to kind of enhance the IDE of Sublime Text. So we'll go ahead and install it. And what we'll see here is there's this little command here that we can run to install it into Sublime. It has versions for 2 and 3. So I had installed Sublime 3, if you guys remembered previously. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this, and I'll go back over to Sublime, and if I hit Control tick mark, it'll bring up this little command window at the bottom, and I'll just paste what I just copied from that website and just hit enter. And you can see it's kind of running some things. Once that completes, now I can bring up the package control, and if I hit Command Shift P, it brings up this little menu, and if I just do install packages, I see package control. So if you see at the bottom down at the status, I don't know if you saw that, it was just loading up all the packages that it found. But now I can just do a search, and so you can just install anything to your heart's content to kind of enhance this IDE, and that's what we'll do here to kind of improve the development experience for Angular specifically, and a little bit for Node and for Gulp. So what we'll do is, the first plugin I like to install is, if you notice here in the sidebar, if I right click, there's a limited set of options here that I have available to me. What I'd like to have is just give this sidebar a little bit more power. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and run install package, and there's this package out there called SideBarEnhancements, and so I'll just click that, and you notice at the bottom it says SideBarEnhancements successfully installed. Now when I right click something, I get way more functionality, something that you may be normally used to seeing in an IDE. Before delete, move, or rename was not even in here, but just by installing that little plugin, you see that I've just kind of improved the performance of that sidebar enhancement, of the options that it gives you. So that's the first plugin that we installed. The second one we're going to install is SublimeLinter, and basically what we want to do. So I'll open up a particular project, a particular JavaScript file. Is what we want to do is kind of improve what type of errors you may see in a file. So we kind of use JSHint for that, and so Sublime Text has pretty decent, actually very good support for showing any type of errors or warnings that it finds in a JavaScript file. So this project is completely JavaScript as far as the code being written on the client and front end. So it would behoove us to kind of use a tool like JSHint. So the first thing we want to do is go back to, if I hit Command Shift P, go here, and install package. What we want to do is install a package called SublimeLinter or Linter. And this is basically just a framework for the different type of linters that are out there. And there's several. So sometimes when you install packages, it gives you like these control messages that kind of tells you the status of the project. And even after you've installed packages, from time to time, as you reload Sublime Text, these packages probably will get updated automatically. And if they are, you'll probably see some message from the author or authors kind of letting you know the type of things that were improved or added with that version the product or package that you installed previously. So here, just a pretty simple layout of just telling you what SublimeLinter is. So that's just a framework. What we want to do now is install a SublimeLinter, and that'll be called JSHint. So we'll just install packages, and we'll do SublimeLinter JSHint. Okay, and so that will just install the JSHint plugin. So you see down there in the status bar, it says that the package was actually installed. Now if I go back to my JS file, I don't see anything. And that's because I don't have JSHint installed on my machine. So what we'll do is we'll go back down to the terminal, and we'll install JSHint globally using npm. Alright, so that seemed to install, and what we'll do is we will not only just close Sublime, but we'll make sure that it's completely terminated. And so if we start it up again, actually, we won't do it that way. We'll use our handy dandy symbolic link. We'll start it up, and now if we look for a main controller, you see here that I see little tick marks here in the gutter. So this little area here in this IDE is what they call the gutter. And what we see are these little tick marks, so it kind of indicates any issues with the JavaScript that it's found. And if I highlight that, it'll tell me down in the status bar what it's looking for. So it's expecting a not double equal as opposed to the not equality symbol and just one equal. And so you'll see that, and you can see those type of warnings and sometimes errors throughout any file that maybe have any issues. You can customize this plugin too, which is a pretty neat thing to do. So what we could do is, I think if we go to Tools, SublimeLinter, we can actually change the theme of what's actually shown, what type of icon is shown in the gutter. So I can select like a circle, and you'll see like bigger circles. Or if I choose hands, well, it'll show up so hand icons or symbols. The one I like to use is the one called Colora. It's kind of pretty decent little symbols, and it kind of really stands out when you're looking at a JavaScript file. You can make other little changes too. Here I want to say the mark style instead of outline, which is this symbol right here of the offending code. I'm going to say that that should be squiggly lines. So we'll do a squiggly underline, which kind of normally the symbol I see in IDEs like Visual Studio whenever there's a warning or an error in the file. So that just gives you an idea how you can just add more visibility to JavaScript files using JSHint. The cool thing about JSHint is you can customize how it validates your files by using this JSHint RC file. So here we just got some basic flags turned on, telling it whether or not we're using Node, whether or not, see, this is a browser application, which on the client it is, and other flags that kind of control how JSHint parses and validates our files. So that's SublimeLinter and JSHint. Another cool plugin that we like to use, and I actually think we will be using this, is something called EditorConfig. So by default, we have an EditorConfig here, and it kind of specifies our indentation style, which is spaces as opposed to tabs, and the indentation size, which is 2. I think by default, if I can find this here, the indentation by default for Sublime Text is tabs, they're not spaces, and the width is 4. So theoretically, when a new developer comes on the project and he's either using Sublime Text or some other IDE, it's quite possible that he could introduce tabs into the code base. Now, that's normally not a big deal. It does become an issue when you have multiple developers not using the same IDE, working with text files. It comes a little hard just kind of managing that, when someone is using spaces and he's trying to navigate the code and you're running up against a tab, that's normally can introduce issues. So what we'll do is, before I install that, we can just take a look at EditorConfig. Basically, it's just a file format to kind of specify these type of things. The cool thing is it has support across multiple IDEs. So obviously this whole video is with Sublime Text, but we're gonna probably have developers on the project that uses WebStorm, and even some devs are just very comfortable with Notepad++. But there's a pretty wide range of IDEs that have the support for EditorConfig, which is why I think we really like to use it. So to install it, we'll do Command-Shift-P again, do install package, and here we'll install the EditorConfig plugin. See that it's installing, which may take a minute. And notice the tab size is 4 here for plain text. But the configuration for EditorConfig, although you can specify the types of file, we used asterisk here to say for any file. So now you notice that after the plugin was installed, the indentation changed from tab to spaces and 2. And also, if we go and look at the indentation now, it'll say 2 and it says indent using spaces. That's because that plugin looked at this EditorConfig file to configure how it's going to specify the indentation style. So that's another plugin. That's EditorConfig. Now, one of the most powerful plugins that I really like is the Angular plugin. So obviously, this is a Angular project. We have a lot of Angular code here, so I'll bring up that controller again. So this is just a controller in Angular that's managing a view in our project. So what we'll want to do is kind of install this Angular plugin that provides some auto completions as well as some pretty cool snippets for us. So if I just install package, and we'll look for the Angular plugin. It's called AngularJS, and we'll just install that. So this is the control message for it, and it just tells us that this project is now a merge of 2 other projects, which is a good thing. So this now has way more features and functionality. So now we can kind of look and see what this plugin provides us. Now, if I look up AngularJS in Sublime Text, it'll bring me right to that project. And I think there's 3 main features as opposed to shortcuts that it uses. Now, I may need it. There may have been a key map that may have been hijacked by other plugin, but we'll verify that. So there's 3 main key maps that you'll want to use if you're using this plugin. One is Super Control L, which for Mac is Command for the super key. If you're on a Windows, using a Windows keyboard, that'll be the Windows key. So super, depending on the OS or the technology, that key may be mapped differently. So again, for Mac, it'll be the Command key. For Windows, it'll be the Windows key. So anyway, for Super plus Control plus L, it'll bring up a quick definitions of all the Angular specific items in your project. So that whether that be a controller, filters, services, factories, anything of that nature, directives, it'll bring it up in this list. So we'll try to use that right now. So again, if we do, make sure I got that right, Command Control L. Now notice nothing happened. And if I do it again, it's very quick. If you look at the menu here, if I do Command Control L, well, there's something that it looks like took that mapping from me. And if I look, I'm not for sure. Yeah, I think it was actually the linter. Now Command Control Command L is actually being hijacked by this command. So what we want to do is we want to take back control of that and map it back to our Angular package. So what we'll do is, and this is another cool thing about Sublime Text, you have complete control of the key maps of your project. So what we'll do is we'll look at SublimeLinter just to see what it's using for its key map for that particular control, and it's this one right here. So we'll copy that as a baseline. That's the one we want to use. Now to create our own maps, all we got to do is just go to Key Bindings User, and this is empty by default because anything that's in this file overrides any key maps that have been defined by any package that you add. So that's cool because it gives you control of how you want your key maps to be defined. And so in this case, what I want to do is I want to change this command from SublimeLinter lint to AngularJS find. So we'll just copy that. We'll paste that here. We'll save this file, close it. Now if I hit Command Control L, let me make sure maybe the file has to be indexed. Let me do that again. Command Control L. Now it brings up the list of all the Angular files in the project. And again, these will be whether these are modules, constants, directives, factories, and it doesn't just pull in files in the project. As you see here, most of these are components that we don't own. So these are mostly from Angular Bootstrap. So it'll even pull those in to kind of show. So any directive, if you named it, it'll be here, and it'll only be, these are only Angular specific components. There won't be anything else in here. So modules, services, constants, factories, directives, it'll be in it. It'll be in this list. So that's a cool key map. The other key map is go-to definition. I think this one is pretty cool, and I think WebStorm has a specific. And I'll move these over so we can kind of see the key map here. So one benefit of this is if I go to app.html, and if I was perusing this file and I wanted to know where this navbar controller is, well, all I got to do is hit Super Control Alt L, and it'll navigate to that particular file. So that's pretty cool. If I wanted to see where contract was defined, well, I'd hit Command Control Alt L, and it'll go to that factory. So that's just a pretty cool way to kind of go and navigate your code. You know, if I'm going to go look at where network is defined, well, I'll just hit Command Control Alt L, and it'll just take me right there. So that's really one of the best key maps you have just for navigation, because you can easily navigate the code base just by just hitting those commands. Here I can just go to the actual module that's defining the app for us. That's pretty cool. And one of the things I used to like to use, one of the last key maps I like to use, is being able to highlight a particular item. So here we'll go back to our main controller, and if I wanted to know more information about scope, before I was able to hit Super key, Shift, Control L, and it'll pop up over the browser, and it'll give me like a cool page that gave me a good description of what scope meant. However, it sounds like just recently the URL structure of the Angular docs have changed somewhat. So that particular key map doesn't necessarily work now. Now, I don't know if the authors of the plugin is going to kind of revisit this to maybe kind of close this gap between looking up things like definitions of core Angular components, but it would be very cool if they would add that back, because I thought that was a very cool thing. Let's see what else we can use with this plugin. Another one of the benefits for this plugin is auto completion. So if you were working with a lot of HTTP, just hitting autocomplete just brings all the options for HTTP, or if you're using logging instead of console, which you should be doing, you'll see a list of items for that, or if you're just using the Angular object directly, you'll see all the methods available for the Angular global object. It has a few snippets as well. So if I wanted to create a controller, I could just by hitting controller there. If I want to do a factory, same way, service, same thing. So it has filter, probably not filter, I don't think, but it does have, I'm pretty sure, verbose directive. If you're creating a director from scratch. So a couple of cool little snippets that gives you some edge on just creating those type of Angular components when you need it to. So that's the Angular plugin. Again, I highly recommend if you're going to use Sublime Text to use that plugin because it's very beneficial if when you're doing development within Sublime. Another good plugin, it's a smaller plugin, and it may not be more beneficial for you or not, but I really like it, is the Gulp plugin. I think we used Gulp, the Gulp build order. A lot of people use Grunt. We decided to use Gulp to kind of spin up the project and do asset management, like minifying images, CSS files, things of that nature. We use Gulp for that. So I think I don't have Gulp installed right now, so I'll go ahead and install it. And that's a global install. Okay, so now that I have that, if I were to just type Gulp, by default, I have all the assets already installed. We've seen that. It'll just spin up the app and just bring up the app, which is cool. And it'll do any outputting. Now, if you wanted to just use this within Sublime, you can absolutely do that just by installing a plugin. So we'll do that. So we'll go ahead and install a package called Gulp. It's right there for us. And you see it down in the status that it's installing, and it actually installed. Got a cool control message, just telling us to make sure we're not missing anything here. Okay, looks like we can just start up Gulp from the command palette. But what we'll do is we'll create key maps for starting and stopping Gulp within the IDE. So if I do Gulp Sublime Text, I think this is the plugin for it, and it'll give us the key maps that we want to use to start Gulp up. So here, and also I'll go through a few of these snippets, which are pretty cool. But I'll just scroll down here and hopefully I'll run. Yeah, so these are the keys. So what we want to do is we want to start up Sublime with a specific task. The task name will be default, and we want to kill Sublime. The key now, and that's no pun intended, is to actually find a good key map for it. Now I have one already I use for both of these, and I'll just show you guys what I'm using there. So I'll go ahead, and open up my user key binding, and I'm going to add another key here. This is all JSON, so it's really cool. And I'm going to copy this as a template. So the command I'm going to use for starting up Gulp is Control-Shift+G. Kind of look through all my previous key maps, and this isn't an important. I think it was previously mapped to creating a macro, so I'm not doing any of that. So I'll go ahead and use this one. And here, as you can see, give it the command Gulp. And then I got to give it args. And the arg would be the actual default task name that I want to kind of set up. And so got to give it a task name. And the task name is default. And we'll just test this, and hopefully we didn't cause any errors here. So by doing Control-Shift-G, looks like that worked. I don't know if you guys can see that, but down here, yeah, in the command window, it starts now. But now, to stop it, I have to hit Control-Shift-P and type Gulp, and then kill running task to actually kill Gulp. Well, what I want to do is create a key map to kill it. So again, I'll just copy this, and the key map I want to use is Control-Shift-K. And the command for killing gulp is gulp_kill, as you can see right here. So we'll go ahead and just replace Angular find with gulp_kill. Now, if we do Control-Shift-G, we start gulp, the app starts up, everything's good. Now, if I want to kill it, I can just do Control-Shift-K. Oops, sorry, I just deleted a line out of there. Let me save that. Control-Shift-K. Let's look at that again. I did super key. Look at that. It should be Shift. Now if I do Control-Shift-K. So I may have hijacked, because it looks like Control-Shift-K previously was deleting a line, but that's a little less useful to me than starting up gulp and killing gulp. So sometimes you're gonna have to make a priority decision of which key maps are most important, because it's highly likely, because there's so many key maps with Sublime, and I'll kind of show you that key map file. So if I go to key mappings default, well, these are the key maps currently defined. The file itself is 680 plus lines long. So there's a lot of maps in here. So it's highly likely that if you're going to set up some maps specifically for you, you're going to override another key mapping. The question would be, what's the priority of that key mapping? For me, it looks like previous mapping for Control-Shift-K was to delete the current line out of a file. Well, that's not as important to me as figuring out a good map for killing it, and Control-Shift-K makes a lot of sense. So that's gulp. So we'll do 2 more plugins, but I think we're pretty close to having this IDE a pretty viable IDE for doing development in Angular, at least. What we'll do now, one of the things I want to show before I move on is there's a lot of cool little snippets, as you can see, for if you're doing stuff in Node. Node is more, if you're familiar with Node, is more pipe structure, so you can kind of, use that pipe metaphor that's very persistent within the Node world of getting something as a source stream and piping it out to a destination. Well, there's a lot of snippets for that, as you can see. So that's pretty cool. So you got snippets, and you got a couple of commands to start up gulp and kill gulp. So that's the gulp plugin. Since we are doing some Node work, and we'll look at under the server folder, you see this is our Node infrastructure. There's a couple of pretty decent plugins out there for Node. I don't really necessarily use them. I did want to kind of let you guys know that there are some out there. So we can do Control-Shift-P and install package. We'll just install this Node.js one here. We'll open up a file. I think the biggest thing here is just namespaces. Yeah. So whereas before you wouldn't have necessarily seen this. Now that I've installed that package, you get to see, like for file system, like all the different methods that you can call with FS. Same with, say for example, I wanted to use path or process or net. You'll be able to see that just by typing those 3 letters. I think there's a couple of snippets here as well. I haven't used it, but if I just type Node, yeah. If I want to do an HTTP GET, just out. That's a good little snippet for just creating a quick handler for an HTTP GET. If I wanted to do, there's a few here for creating a server, HTTPS server. You just select that one, it'll just create a quick server bound to port 8000. So there's a few snippets, not a lot, looks like about 5 or 6, but something that'll kind of help you out quickly if you wanted to if you're, need some shortcut for writing your Node code. So that's a pretty good plugin. The last one we'll do is the color theme. The default color theme isn't that bad. I do like options. So there's a lot of color themes out here in package control. But the one I like is from this guy named Dale Rees, I think is his name. I'm sorry. Let me do install packages first. Dale Rees color theme. So we'll go ahead and install that. And as you can see there, you see it installing, and it's just installed. If I go to preferences, color theme, this particular package has a lot of color themes. So I can just select one, and you see it change. If I select the arrow code, if I wanted to change it to gloom, or let's say chocolate, which seems like a pretty decent theme. So if you're really into that thing, it really helps me kind of see things. I actually have a specific one that I really like. It's this Earth Song contrast. It's really brings out syntax highlighting and things of that nature. It's really decent. I'm not for sure. Yeah, I didn't know if there was that this package particularly added a menu option here. A lot of them do. It doesn't look like, unless it's under something else, you have to access it via the preferences menu, which is fine. So that one I thought is pretty handy and dandy as well. If you like color themes for your IDE, it's way more than the one that I selected. I just think that's one of the better ones out here. But there are a lot of color themes out there, and a lot of them added daily, it seems. Before we move our package control, I did want to kind of highlight how, if you wanted to kind of see, trending packages, or a lot of the ones that are very popular, you could just go to SublimeWbun.net to kind of see that. So these are the trending packages here. These are the most popular. Again, talk about themes. There's a latest theme here that seems to be the most downloaded and liked theme out here. So if you wanted to kind of just take a look and see what all the packages, and maybe you wanted to enhance Sublime a little down a little different path than I was setting it up, that's very something that you could probably do, or you can do, actually. So that was just wanted to show you that if you really want to do a search for packages that you think may be out here, or you were looking for a specific framework that a package may have already been managed for that, this will be the site to do it. All right, so this is setting up the IDE for Sublime for development with Angular and Node. One of the last things I like to do, it has nothing to do with Angular, but again, since I spend a lot of my time in the terminal, specifically, if I'm doing something with Git, I normally do it from a terminal as opposed to do it from some Git GUI. And there's some pretty good GUI tools for Git out there. I tend to use the terminal because it's faster, and I'm just used to it by now. One cool thing you could probably do is enhance your command prompt to kind of show you the branch that you're currently on. Now I think there is, let me see if I can look this up here. So I tend to use this prompt here to kind of manage how my prompt going to use. And the only thing I do is I copy this snippet, I place it into I think it's a git alias file, a bash alias file. And then I basically just run through these set of instructions to get my prompt working. So we'll do that now. So basically what we want to do is I copied this snippet and added it to a file called bash_aliases here. They make some tweaks here because I think this particular version of it shows the current time. I didn't really care for that. But I just copied it in here and saved it. Now what I want to do is I want to open up that bash RC file. Sorry, C. And what I want to do here is I'll make sourcing of MVM a little bit first. But what I want to do here is source that alias file if it exists. So I do -f, and then look at the root directory, bash aliases. Make sure that's spelled correctly. If that's the case, we'll source it. Source means just loading, of course. And I'll save this. And if everything looks correctly, and let me make sure, well, I'm not in a Git repository yet, which is good. So I'll just go ahead and just source that file to make sure there's no errors. Normally there are errors, and there's not. There's nothing that changed with my prompt. That's good. The only thing that it should only change when I'm in a Git repo. So what I'll do is I'll move over to a Git repo. So once I make that change to my bash RC file, notice I'm getting this _get_ps1 that's not installed. What that seems to be is you got to have bash completion installed. And again, with brew, this makes it easy to kind of resolve that, hopefully. And so we'll just do brew install space bash dash completion. And I think for the most part, and let's see if this works here. Looks like we need to add the following line to our bash script, which is cool. So I'll copy this and I'll add it above my alias file because that may be dependent. So we'll add that here. We'll get rid of the extra space and we'll save this and we'll try it again. So this time we'll resource our bash RC file. And so after some slight tweaks, I now have what I'm looking for. So you can see here, I'm in my Git repo directory, and it shows that I'm on the develop branch. If I were to make a change or add like a file to this directory, notice it turns red and it gets surrounded by parentheses. But that's fairly easy to do, and also the color changes. So you see that as well. I'm sorry, not parentheses, but brackets. And if I were to kind of delete that file by using git clean, notice it goes back to green. And if I were to change to a different branch, and notice too I'm using tabs because now that I have git completions installed, I don't have to type out the full name of a branch. I can just type the beginning of it and just hit tab and it'll auto-complete for me. Again, notice that the branch changed. So there was just some small tweaks that I made. One was on line 93 of my bash aliases that I copied from this website. I just basically just changed how my name and the machine name and the current directory is outputted. So this kind of changed a little bit. And then the /w kind of just shows the current directory that I'm working in. So this is the working directory. And after that, the magic of that bash script kind of displays the branch name. What's cool again is this shouldn't affect any directories that don't have a repo attached to it. So if I were to go to my root directory, it looks like a regular branch. So everything looks good. There's nothing there. If I go back to the directory that has my repo, my Git repository in it, then it will only display the branch. If I'm outside of a Git repo, it won't even display any branch name, but obviously that wouldn't make any sense. So that's setting up your prompt if you're working primarily from the terminal, which I am, to manage to do some Git work. And I think this is all I think we're good for this video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you.